Welcome to The Growth Equation. This isn't your typical business podcast. We're keeping it real about the challenges of scaling up, period. I'm Tristan Wright, and I've been there. I've built and scaled my own business. I've sold it. I've learned a ton along the way. Now I'm bringing you the no BS stories of founders who are in the trenches right now, navigating that messy middle. We're talking advertising, marketing, design, creative, branding, the whole 9 yards. Doesn't matter if you're a solopreneur or running a team of 100. Everyone's got a secret sauce, that thing that makes them different, better. We're going to uncover it. So grab a coffee and let's get real. Today we're talking to Katherine from Catalyst Brand Strategy. Katherine, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me, Tristan. It's a real pleasure.
My pleasure. So I've been really looking forward to this chat. Can you tell us a tiny bit about your backstory and how you got into Catalyst?
Yes, I was expecting that. Absolutely.
It's a convoluted journey and a convoluted story.
It is, yes. I've actually had recruiters reach out and say, I've never seen a resume like yours before. I was like, yes, it's been a journey for sure. So the short version is I've sort of been a traveler or an expat my whole life to some degree. I was born in Finland and I've traveled the world at a young age. And then we settled in Australia when I was 8. But that didn't kick the travel bug. So it carried on well into my teens and adulthood. And now I'm a digital nomad, still exploring the world, and it's been a real pleasure. In terms of Catalyst itself, I actually have a background in the entertainment industry where I worked for Fox Film Studios and Warner Brothers and a bunch of others, which was an exceptional journey into storytelling and one that still very much forms the foundation of what we do today. With that said, I was there before Me Too and after Me Too. So while I will always appreciate storytelling, I also became aware that there are other ways to tell a story. And that led me into marketing, where I maxed out as a freelancer and reached out to a colleague of mine who was an art director. And I said, hey, would you like to collaborate on this piece? And before we knew it, it was collaborating on more pieces, and it really kind of snowballed and became an organic team from there.
Awesome. So, and today, whereabouts did you say you're based right now?
I'm in Brazil currently, yes.
You're in Brazil, but where is the company currently registered?
Right. So we're registered as an Australian business, but our team is mostly in the US/remote internationally. And I just travel in between.
Yeah. So you're definitely a digital nomad. Your company is registered in Australia. You're Finnish Australian. You've got most of your clients in the US.
Yeah.
And you're currently in Brazil.
Exactly. Yes.
We'd struggle to be more multicultural if we could.
That's fair. Yes. I mean, it's a real pleasure to work with so many different cultures and nationalities, and I think it always makes it interesting.
How do you find managing the different time zones, the different cultures, and the different expectations from different businesses in different regions?
That is such a great and loaded question.
Yes.
I would say that the time zones were, when I first started, I was in Australia working mostly with US clients, and that was killer. There's no polite way to put it. I was often nocturnal. I would wake up at 5 a.m., go to sleep, sometimes set an alarm at 2 a.m. for meetings. It was absolute madness in the first year. And that's a big reason why I decided to leave Australia for the most part, where I could have more of a middle ground, which would make it much easier to work with both Australian clients and US clients and all over. So yes, I would say being nocturnal is not recommended for long stints. But once we were past that hurdle and I was in more of a middle ground base, the biggest thing I would say is just being really open-minded to different cultures. And obviously, no matter what culture we're all from, we're human at the end of the day. And there are some common themes and universal themes that we can all relate to. And I think that's what helps bridge the gap. Yeah,
totally. So what does the business look like today? Is it you and your friend, or do you have freelancers, or do you have a permanent team? How does it all work together?
Yes, that's fair. So we have permanent contractors, and they're from all over. We have some in the Philippines, some in the US, one in Lisbon. Yes, there's quite a mix. So in terms of how we typically work, most of us are on a contracted basis, depending on the project. And I really found that enables us to scale when needed and also kind of go through the fluctuations. So we've only got one full-timer, like classic full-timer, other than myself, of course. And then the rest are all more like permanent part-time or permanent casual.
Yeah. Are they tied to projects, or are they, as the work like they're effectively full time, but they scale up and down as required?
Exactly. Effectively full-time. They work across all of the clients we have, and we all kind of work in that ecosystem. And a big question I get asked a lot is like, well, how do you manage the different time zones between the team members? And I actually say that this is one of our assets, because it means that we can one person will go to sleep and then wake up with work being done. And so we're sort of almost always tag teaming it, and it feels more like we can get more done in less time, which is kind of nice. Yeah. So it works.
Yeah. So you'd be using a lot of async communication. When we had our conversation last time, it was like, I want to learn and understand how the team communicates and progresses a project along without double up and without mistakes. So I want to dig into that for a minute.
Yes, that's a great point. So a couple of things. We have everyone who is working in their zone of genius. So typically, rather than having like journalists who do a bit of everything and then there's a lot of crossover, I've made it so that each person very much has their area, they have their zone. And then once that piece of content or that part of the marketing is complete, then we can pass it on to someone else in basically, quote unquote, a different department. So that means that it's almost more like, I describe it as like baking a cake. So we have the ingredients that go in, and then once the ingredients are in and it's in the oven, we can't necessarily backtrack, take those ingredients out and then redo the cake. So that's the advice I give to clients whenever they're doing approvals. We kind of say, you need to approve it in the right time and order, so that way it can continue to function smoothly. And all of that is transparently laid out from the get-go. So there's not a lot of backtracking or team crossover, if that makes sense. But yeah, I hope that answered the question.
Yeah. So you've got really structured processes that you explain to your client and your team, and you have to follow your SOP.
Pretty much, yes. I mean, there is always room for creativity, and some of our clients come up with new ideas, and we always say we're flexible and open to that within reason. It just means that there may be a change in the timeline of the original output that we suggested. So as always, it comes down to just communicating openly every step of the way.
Totally. Now, I want to go back to before Catalyst was started. So you had a day job. What was that day job, and what was the trigger for you to go from working at Warner? I think it was Warner that you changed from working there to you being a freelancer and then building Catalyst.
Yeah, that's fair. So, I mean, yeah, exactly. It's been quite the journey. So I was 25 back then, and I mean, I think I just got to the point where it was quite a toxic environment. Not just that specifically, but I'd been in my fair share of toxic workplaces, and I was just fascinated by, okay, well, what makes a place toxic and what makes it healthy? And if I were to run my own business, how would I make it healthier? And so I really went down this rabbit hole of not just personal development, but also cultural and workplace development. And I furthered my studies and just a lot of the inner work that often comes with entrepreneurship. And in the meantime, I was fortunate to be able to freelance as I was studying. So that's basically what led me to realize, well, hang on a second. If there is a way to create a healthy culture, what would that be? And that sort of got me curious on this journey. But the actual turning point was I was working at a luxury retail place where I was selling very high-end watches, and I crunched the numbers on how much sales people on the floor make versus how much we sell. And I was like, hang on a second. I have all the skills I need in order to sell this like 80K piece, and I'm only getting a fraction of that salary day to day. What if I just sold something that was my own? I would get 100% of those profits. And so it just sort of switched in my mind of like, if I can sell something, I can do more than just be at this watch store. So I think that was the biggest kind of aha moment for myself.
Yeah, awesome. So what was the first thing that you started selling? And why did you decide to sell that?
That's fair. It was copywriting, actually. So, I mean, I've always loved writing, and it's always been one of my strengths. So I think it happened kind of organically. It was a friend, not even a friend, like a colleague who was in Singapore, and he was like, hey, I need some advice on this startup I'm running. And I was like, how about I give you the advice and help you with the output? And so that he became one of the very, very first clients I had as a freelancer.
Yeah. So you started with copy. How has that progressed from there to what your offer is today?
Yeah, great question. So I would say that in a lot of ways, content remains a core foundation of anything we do. Because if we can't understand the brand UBP, the unique story that they have to share, if we cannot accurately represent who they are and what they stand for, then no marketing message is going to feel aligned, especially for the wellness industry, which is where we specialize in. So I would say storytelling, whether it was in the media industry directly from my former career or in sales or in copywriting, it's always the through line that keeps us centered and oriented towards any marketing campaign we do.
Right, yeah. So initially you were selling the execution component, which is
Right.
copywriting. You're still doing copywriting, but that's just the tool that you're doing now. You're actually selling the strategy, the UV, whatnot.
Right. Because when we first started, a lot of people, they would say, okay, well, here's the copy for the landing page. And now what? And so
Mm.
I've noticed that there was a bit of a disconnect, even with other copywriters I've worked with in the past, where they might do one piece of the puzzle, but they don't necessarily understand how that piece fits into the rest of it. So I
Yeah.
was really focused on holistic marketing and what that actually means. And a lot of it went back to like the Pezzo model, but revamped for today. And yeah, I think that has made the work a lot more meaningful, more dynamic, but also more sustainable for the founders so they can actually see how all the pieces fit together with the systems that we put in place.
Yeah, totally. So rather than being just a bit player, you're across the whole brand and understanding everything fully and everything's syncing together.
Absolutely, which is a really dynamic and interesting place to be.
Yeah. Unfortunately, so many business owners that are buying end up they they buying a point solution. Sometimes the point solution works, but unless you understand the entire ecosystem, it's not going to be get the best outcome.
Right, exactly. And I think in marketing, we see a lot of the stuff around tactics like, oh, if you just had LinkedIn ads or if you just had X, it would solve all your business problems. But actually, they're all just tools and any one could work. But at the end of the day, it comes down to asking those bigger questions around, what is your mission? What is your end goal? And what are the lowest hanging fruit things we can do to get there and then slowly amp up. You don't need to show up on all the channels. You don't need to do a TikTok dance and all the things that we're often fed.
Just because that's the thing that's making noise at the moment for the greater population doesn't mean that that piece of noise is what's best for your brand.
Exactly. Absolutely. Very true.
Yeah. Now, as a business owner, yes, you've got full-time, part-time staff. You've scaled up, you've scaled down. What's that journey been like for you behind the scenes? Have you loved every single moment of it? Has there been times that you've
Oh,
questioned it?
oh
Has
gosh,
it been
no.
2 cents in your bank account?
That's fair. Well, the first year, I always have to go back to that because that was the roughest by far, mostly for personal reasons. I had a breakup with a very long-term partner and it was absolutely devastating. And but
Mm.
back then, the business was so new, I didn't have the right systems in place. So, there was no real contract, nothing saying I could take time off, leave, special occasions, nothing. So if I wasn't able to perform in the same way that I'm typically performing at all times, we immediately felt the pinch across the board. And so, like most founders, it's a lesson in accountability and ways that we can strengthen the systems around us to improve the systems that we have in place. So, with all that said, what I went in and fixed was the contract, which enabled not just myself, but anyone in the team to grant them, reasons to have leave, whether it's grievances, we've had family members die from other team members, whether it's, life happens, that's now
Mm.
covered in the contract. And it's something I'm also explicit and transparent about to the clients we have, because at the end of the day, they understand that life happens. So that was probably the biggest lesson I learned very early on. Get your contracts in order and carve out time for being a human being.
Yeah, totally. Because at the end of the day, the business is there as a tool for us to enjoy our life. And if we don't get to be a human being, why are we doing this?
Exactly. Yes. So I would
So,
say that much like other people you've interviewed in the past, it's almost like I don't necessarily want to scale up for the sake of scaling up. It's much more about doing it with intention. And if that means that we stay at 10 people in terms of the team, but everyone on the team loves what they do, we're able to have a life outside of work and we're able to perform at our best, then I would prefer that to kind of growth for the sake of it. So Yeah,
Like at the end of the day, we need to know what makes us tick and what makes us happy. And yes, money helps, but it's just it's a means to an end. Like it's there to help us enjoy. So we need to actually know what it is that motivates us. Yes, the thrill of the chase is one thing, but what's the impact that we're having both on our clients and our personal lives and our family?
absolutely. And you're made acutely aware of that when you are traveling, because I mean, take Brazil right now. Outside of my window, I can see people on the streets, you know, doing shiny tricks to make some extra cash. And it just keeps you grounded in terms of what the reality is of day-to-day living and why people live life to begin with. And I think that because we're also in the wellness industry, we would be hypocritical if people on our team were burning out and killing themselves for the job and not actively figuring out ways to create a healthier environment, both at the work and outside of that.
Totally. So about 10 people now. Has there ever been times where, okay, you've got your contracts in place, but has there ever been times that you've poorly managed cash flow or you've struggled? Because at the end of the day, you're you didn't go to uni to study business. You went and you studied marketing.
Mhm.
From that side of things, like the commercial aspect.
Absolutely great question. Yes, and I'm sure it's something that many business owners slash marketers can relate to, or freelancers for that matter. Absolutely. And I would say, having a good bookkeeper or an accountant makes a world of difference where they're able to give you those insights in terms of like, hey, this is the runway, but this is the more realistic version of what that actually looks like. And having the right tools in place to manage it can make a world of difference. In our case, one of the biggest struggles is it's a bit technical, but like because of Australia versus US in terms of client base, it means that we often get very delayed payments just because the banks are so much slower internationally. And
Mhm.
a lot of the Australian businesses like Airwallex, etc., they advertise as international. But if you compare it to a US based offer who are getting payments instantly, we're still getting payments, 5, 10 days down the track just from transitions, waiting for if the client has paid, it just hasn't arrived in our account. So it's
Oh,
things like
wow.
this, which has been more of a struggle, I would say, for our particular situation. And even when I've worked with bookkeepers or accountants, they don't necessarily know how to handle this because they are more used to dealing with only Australian based or localized companies. So that's something that we've had to kind of just factor in to any kind of invoices we send out and have enough buff to maintain that.
Yeah. Just out of interest, I use Wise instead of Airwallex, and money goes internationally almost instantaneously for a verified partner kind of thing, or a verified person that you've paid with.
Absolutely. Yes, Wise is great. We have transitioned partially over to Wise. I would say the main difference is, and again, maybe it's a bit technical, but Airwallex allows you to have like company cards, which you can assign to each person. So it can be quite handy in terms of managing different
Yes.
teams.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. Like, yeah, Airwallex is definitely beneficial for that. And so, yeah, they've all got their pros and their cons.
Absolutely.
So,
This is not sponsored by either of them.
no, no, not at all. Remember, at the end of the day, we're trying to help other business owners on this podcast. So,
Mhm.
what we've learned is what we're trying to share, so others don't make similar mistakes, or they can make improvements. I can't even talk. Make improvements from what we talk about.
Absolutely. Very true. Yes.
Yeah. So, okay. So managing, like, you need to have like that buffer, like that 5 days of it, 5 or 6 days, because the client is paid, but it's not in your bank account for multiple days. So does that mean, how are you managing that cash flow? Have you got different buckets, or, and you're putting money aside?
That's it. It's the bucket. So we've now got like basically a runway of savings. So even if there's delays, if there's a public holiday, it's not going to immediately impact. With that said, it also comes down to like team expectations and
Mm.
the runway around that. So typically we do like 30 days. So that means they can expect like 30 days from the invoice for that to be cleared out. So yeah, I think it's all the stuff.
Clear communication.
Yeah.
Working on the business first in the business. So we often start our business because we love what we do, which is working in the business and doing delivery. How much are you doing delivery wise versus growing or simplifying the business?
Great question. Is definitely not where it could be. Right now, I'm doing more of the overseeing. So, for example, we'll approve copy, we'll approve graphics. I'm still the final person to make sure that everything is cleared before it goes live. But there's definitely room for me to step back even further. One of the things that I'm sure you've spoken with many founders about is the use of AI. So, we're definitely trying to build out more fleshed out AI systems and just kind of fine tune more of our like assets, SOPs, all that type of stuff. So, I'm definitely spending more time in the like company build side of things, as well as still proofing final things that go out. And I still do sales and also client meetings and reporting. So definitely across more than potentially I should be. But again, we love it. Yeah, it's a fine line.
Yeah, you're spread in, and it works for now, but is it going to keep working in 6 or 12 months?
Right, exactly. And so what I'm kind of doing at currently is building out the systems for the 6 and 12 months so I can continue to step back as we go. And so there's a bit of the initial kind of like growing pains and the extra resources necessary, but in theory, it will work out later when I can continue to step back. And
Totally.
in my, I guess it's worth mentioning that it's definitely much, much better than it was even just last year or the year before. So now I have weekends and I switch off, after a couple, like 5 to 8 hours. So it's definitely much more reasonable in terms of work-life balance.
Yeah. Tell me about how you're using AI in business. So many different business owners use it in very different ways, some quite simple, some in complex ways. So I want to hear how you're using AI.
Yes, great question. So we're definitely in the early stages in terms of having a proven AI system. We haven't got a fleshed out system just yet, but I would say we mostly use it for really recognizing the client brand and copywriting. So we like to use a mix of Perplexity, Claude, and ChatGPT, of course. So we typically do all of the research in Perplexity because that's really great for accuracy. And then we migrate everything over to basically like a client bot, which is for that specific client. So we'll basically do a full brief on who that client is, their tone of voice, etc. And then that can help us either with research, prompting certain things, developing press releases, you name it. And then we obviously still have the final copywriter review everything, fine tune that further, make sure it's ready to go, and then distribute it out. So I would say we've saved like at least 40% of our time, if not more, using AI. And I'm sure many other founders can attest to that as well.
So that process that you just explained, is that all a manual process? You're manually prompting Perplexity, then manually copying and pasting it into, let's say, a Claude project, or do you have automations behind the scenes as well?
So we have automations, but in the very first time of doing it, it's manual, right? So it's like when we're
Yeah.
first boarding that client. So yeah, that's what we're continuing to flesh out. We want the automations to be even more buttoned down. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting close.
Tell me about how those automations would look. So what I'm trying to do is give people examples of how they can use AI and automations together.
Right. Yes. So, I mean, there's so many different ways that this could be done. One of the ways that we would recommend is putting it into whether it's like the final document. So it's chatting to the Google Docs where we house everything, or it's chatting to like a Canva presentation. We basically want it to be connecting with those different platforms to make sure that rather than it just spitting out a generic piece and then we have to copy and paste it, we're then implementing it directly into the final distribution channel for it to go live. So that's
Yeah.
what we're kind of fine tuning.
So are you using Make for that, or how are you How are you, or is it literally Claude, let's say, is connected directly into Canva?
Exactly. Yeah. Right now it's mostly just Claude, but I'm curious about the other things because it's definitely not complete yet. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So, yeah, it's amazing how much time you can save. We need to realize it's a tool, and it still needs to be driven by a human. But the amount of time that you can save, especially once you put in the automations as well.
Absolutely. And maybe on that as well, a big one that we've been using a lot for a number of years now is ManyChat for automating DMs and conversions. So if anyone has created a lead magnet, what you can basically do is you can connect your social media accounts to ManyChat and you simply get it to write a word, which is the keyword or prompt. So it might be like, type in community. And then when someone types in the word community onto your social media channels, it will send them a DM dropping the lead magnet. So stuff like this is great for obviously creating deeper communities, but also automating things like engagement, which can be tricky because obviously it's a human that we're speaking to on the other end. Yeah.
Yeah. What do what does Catalyst look like in 3 years' time from now?
Great question. Yes. Oh, I love that. I would definitely say we would be doing a lot more activations or events or in-person activities. I would love to be doing more collaborations in terms of as I mentioned, we work within the wellness industry. So there's a lot of potential here to be hosting wellness events and really raising awareness on what the clients do and how they're literally changing lives on a daily basis. So I would say it would become almost more of a mix of agency plus advocacy and really sharing that message out to the world. And a big thing I advocate for is impact and income. So I would love to have more ways to be able to measure impact, which I've noticed is a massive gap right now because it can be tricky to actually
Mm.
quantify what that looks like. So yes, definitely more work in creating greater impact beyond just the agency day to day.
Yeah, awesome. Now, let's take a step back. 2 years ago, what's a piece of advice or a piece of knowledge that you wish you had 2 years ago that would have been able to positively impact your business or your lifestyle?
That's a great question. Yes. Oof. Yeah, going back to the contracts thing, get good contracts. That's a big one. Yes. And then the other thing,
Were you burnt or did you lose a client or lose a
we lost several clients all at once.
yeah,
And when you're first starting out, obviously that makes a big difference. And they were willing to give me some flexibility, but I needed a month plus off. And obviously that was just not going to happen at that early stage. So yeah, had we had the right systems in place, I would have been able to mitigate that. So that was a big learning curve. But I would say other than that, it's really, and we hear this all the time, but it's who you surround yourselves with. So a big thing I advocate for in terms of internal team hires is encouraging or vetting people who are very intrinsically motivated. And that's reflected in both the clients we work with and the individual team members. So I found that if the team is passionate about what they do and genuinely cares about the clients that are, saving lives or impacting the world in a positive way, they're going to show up in a completely different way to someone who's just treating this as another typical job. So I would say
yeah,
that's the biggest thing. Continue to align with those who are intrinsically motivated, both client-wise and team-wise.
totally. Like, as you said, who you're surrounded by is who you become kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you need to be around people that are motivated and self-driven. Like they don't need to be where you want to be, where they want to be just yet, as long as they're willing to go that extra mile.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
So
Oh, you go, sorry?
I was just going to say, so that's probably one of the biggest thing. And comes down to like you are the top 5 people you surround yourself with and the things we hear a lot. So I think that's true, not just for the entrepreneur communities that we connect with, but also internally and for the clients we work with.
Have you made poor hires before, or is this just something that you've learnt along the way?
Have I had to hire in the past? You mean?
No, sorry, no. Made poor hires. So yeah,
Yes.
like have you made poor hires, and is that why that's an important thing?
Absolutely. And also sometimes it's not necessarily as clear cut as poor hires, but more just that they weren't the right addition to the team. So
Mm.
an example I like to share here is we advocate for wellness. And there are times where someone might be dealing with mental health struggles. And I've had to have tough conversations with people, especially in the first couple of years of business, who may have had long-term mental health struggles and something deeper happened in their family life or personal life, and they just weren't able to show up consistently in the way that we required them to, especially during the early stages of building a business. And so in some ways, sometimes you have to do the tough love thing or the cruel to be kind thing and say, I wish this was the right environment for you, but it is a fast-paced digital marketing agency. And while we can have asynchronous tools and the contracts in place, there are occasions where we can't be months late on a deliverable without literally feeling the consequences of that. And so those conversations can be extremely tough to have, but you're better off having them early on and then moving forward, because you're essentially letting them know that there is a better environment for you that probably isn't this one. And you could kind of nurture them to that next stage.
Yeah. Being transparent and clear with your communication straight away, not hiding behind things is really, really important.
Absolutely, yes. So that was definitely one of the more tough ones because as was mentioned in some of your other podcasts, you genuinely care about the people you work with. You want the best for them. And it can be really tough when they're just not in a position to be able to deliver what they promised on. And that's where you sort of have to be honest and have that hard conversation. And everyone's better off for it in the long run anyway.
Exactly. Katherine, it's been a pleasure talking today. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to connect?
Probably LinkedIn. Yes, you can find me at Katherine Tuominen on LinkedIn, and that would be the best way to connect.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Tristan.
That's a wrap. Thanks for tuning into The Growth Equation. If you've enjoyed the show, hit that subscribe button and leave a review. It helps us big time. Catch you next time. And if you want more, head over to evolvetogrow.com.au for show notes and exclusive content.